Oops, it looks like we're streaming. Let's just move the microphone before I forget. Clickety clack. How's the volume levels? Yep, they're looking good. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I'm doing a very bad job of hiding the background, but that's fine. We're on the final stages of the build. This is where it gets a bit interesting. So as you can see, I've sort of mocked it together very easily, very simply here. It's actually not joined in any way, but by the end of this stream we should have it joined. There are a couple of things I do want to talk about before I continue, however. So we do have some gyros available. At the moment I'm trying to decide which one I use. I do have this, if I can get it to focus. Probably not. Yeah, so I've got a hack slider. They're great because I've got the micro GST connectors, but I'm actually particularly fond of the Oni Ski ones, and this particular S-Bus based one, because it means I only have to run a cable from the receiver on the S-Bus connector to the gyro, and then from the gyro to the servo. And that I can still adjust the gain if I do that, because it gets both channels over the S-Bus connector. That is a much bigger gyro though, and depending on the space, I think I actually want to keep this build very minimal and clean, so I might end up going with the hack slider. And I see a lot of people put them on the back, and I'm very tempted to chuck it, say there for example. It doesn't really sit flat though. I suppose I could put it there, mount it there or something, but we'll see. So I do have some parts, so let's just do a quick test fit and see how that all looks together. So if we put that there, there's no reason why we couldn't put the gyro on the top there. There's no reason why we couldn't put the ESC there. And then run the cables along there. And then put the receiver there. And the reason we'll put the receiver there, I'll show you in a second. But before we do that, as you can see in the corner here, the next step is to actually put the servo on. Now I actually have two servos, so I have two servos for testing today. One is the Atomic, and the other one is, focus, it's not going to like me today if I do that. And I do want to actually get, there we go. Okay, it's not working too well. Basically, this is the one that Beaver recommends that you get off Banggood, and they're cheap, they're super fast. And I actually went and checked it earlier. These two servos have the exact same dimensions. And if you look at the side here, the layer lines are exactly the same. They're at the exact same level. And more importantly, all the screws are absolutely identical. So I've got a feeling these are just a rebranding of each other. The other thing that kind of clues me onto the fact that they actually might be the same servo is this is actually a proper, I want to call it a pro grade servo tester. If not pro grade, it's definitely at the top end. So if we do that, yeah, I've got both servos plugged into the side, and actually I'll just do it my way first. There we go. So I've just got the, let's move that out of the way, servos just toggling back and forward. Let's see if we can see that on camera. Sort of. It's that light that's annoying. Either way, you can see the response is similar on that. You don't have to know too much about how the graphs work or anything like that, just that the lines look similar. But the important part is, and I've orientated these 90 degrees, if I line them up like that, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to watch, they're actually meeting at the exact same time. So these look like they've actually got the exact same response time. Now I've actually got a feeling the ones off Banggood are a bit cheaper. I haven't checked the price at this time. But if these servers are identical and it's cheaper off Banggood, I'm just going to keep on going with my Banggood ones. I've got about 6 of these in stock. And I know I get a lot of comments and I keep a lot of parts on stock, but I also go through a lot of parts, and that's just due to the custom builds I do all the time. So I'm reasonably happy that these are equivalent, and I see no reason to go with the atomic ones, because the atomic ones are actually hard to get compared to the Banggood ones. I can definitely order off Banggood and have them in a couple of days, so there we go, that's a much better picture. Now I wouldn't be worried that the current consumption seems a bit lower on mine. If I actually put a bit of force on it, you see it completely changes the graph. So it can also depend on how I'm holding them, if they're leveraging against themselves and having to lift themselves up. So that's a good sign. We know the servos are roughly equivalent. These are both micro JST. The other nice thing about these ones is you can get them in the micro JST, so that end, and you can also get them in that end. So I don't have to use a converter. And I've got both. When I use the full-size NB4 transmitters, I use the other normal connectors. And I've picked up a bunch of micro connectors, and I'll be using this plug-in for that, just to keep the entire build a tiny bit cleaner. If you've noticed, I actually have already installed the mounts on the side. Now, the one that comes with the DRZ kit is this plastic thing, and I can't actually work out what this part here is for, this little protrusion. It's actually really difficult to angle things when I'm looking at the camera. I don't know what that's for, I don't really care. I bought the third-party metal mounts and pretty happy with them actually, pretty high quality. And the other reason I'm really happy is that Atomic has taken pretty big steps to make the servo mount very, very configurable. So I'm very, very tempted to go off and show you now. But I'm going to stop there for a moment because I'm going to talk about some other things before we move on to any of the actual build steps. So let's talk about electronics. We've talked about the servo. We know which servo we're using. I'll install the servo horn properly later. I've got an Ensotech motor here. We're dealing with the 3500K, if you can see on the back. Not that it matters. I do like that it's got the cables pre-soldered, which is nice. That's why I'm thinking about putting the ESC roughly here, because then I only have to run the cables basically up and around, and I can have a very, very clean build. I might even wrap them under the carbon fiber in the middle and then back and around, just to make the cables a bit longer. I normally put a special type of connector here and make my motors removable. I don't know if I'll do it in this case. I think I might just Velcro down the ESC. Now that I've got a bunch of ESCs, I don't have to worry about swapping them around. Previously, I only just had enough ESCs, and I always said to myself, if I didn't buy any more, I'd just move them between cars. But I haven't. It turns out that's not an issue. I just went off and bought some more. So, oh god, that suspension is still so supple. I'm really, really glad I spent the time on that. I also spent some time adjusting the shocks slightly to even everything up, and just to add a bit of preload so that the springs weren't moving around and there was no droop in the system. So next I'm using the smaller of the two ESCs from Ensotech. There's not much of a difference. One of the things to note with these motors, however, is this little rubber button is very, very prone to coming out. So don't slide it back and forward. Always make sure you push it down from the top, because once it comes out, it's next to impossible to get back in. Or you can get it back in, but it doesn't actually stay very well. So it's only happened on one of my motors, but one of my cars, but it's been annoying because now I need a screwdriver to turn it on. These can be a bit difficult to solder, but we'll get to that later. Basically, the trick to soldering is to have everything clean. You can do as much as you want, but if you don't have clean ends, you're just in for a difficult time. The best thing you can do is clean the end. And we'll go into how you do that, because you'll see the recommendation, use steel wool, and I'll actually talk about why that can be a bad idea. So, last things we have to talk about is bodies. Now, I did say the other day I wanted to keep very, very true in terms of style with the cars. So I wasn't going to use a two-wheel drive drift chassis on a car that was all-wheel drive. And it turns out the Lancia Delta is all-wheel drive, and the Celica GT4 was also all-wheel drive. So they're both out. We knew the Subaru was a four-wheel drive. I'm still kind of tempted to make that a drift chassis, but the reason that might end up being a two-wheel drive chassis is the MA30, which I really like, compared to the MA20, which is not a bad car by any means, but I'm just preferring the MA030. That can only go down to a minimum length and have the rear independent suspension. So the final choice we had was the Lancia Delta. Now this this plastic could use a tiny bit of a clean or a polish. It is a bit greyed, and the white looks very, very white here, but it's actually yellowed slightly, and that's just a consequence of some of the older models from. That's an interesting texture inside. Some of the older models from Kyosho were a different plastic, and they do tend to do that over time. The one thing to note is the plastic on these older models is, as you can see there, significantly thicker, and the body doesn't flex nearly as much. So getting these body clips on and off is a bit more difficult. It is a nice car, and I would love to put LEDs in here like someone did for the Celica GT4. If you're watching this video on YouTube, I'll probably link to that video, because what that guy did was absolutely phenomenal, and it really makes this car look really, really awesome. I do have some programmable tri-color LEDs, and it would be interesting in places like here where it's actually split yellow and orange to put the tri-color LEDs in here and then wire it up to a light computer internally. I've been wanting to do that for a while, and this might be a good opportunity to do that. So I'm going to put this body aside, because if I can't use that body, and the reason I might not be able to use that body is I might not have enough clearance at the front here. It's going to depend on where the body clip sits. Then the second choice I have is we're going to go traditional drift chassis, and this has got a bit of dust on it. Rather than go with a classic A86 body, I do have a race spec or drift spec AE86, which I really, really like. It's got a metallic blue chip on here, which you can only just see in the lights. It's a bit more pronounced in person, but still very, very subtle. So you may give this a go. There's another two variants. So you get beyond this one and the standard body. So you're probably used to the AE86 with that's classic white, the tofu delivery vehicle. There's another one that's red and with a carbon fiber hood. And then there's another race body like this, which I would have actually preferred to this one, but I'm also a pretty big fan of the blue. So it's interesting to note that both this and the Lancia have the antenna hole. So these were intended for the old AM models that had like a really large antenna coming out the back. Luckily, it sort of blends into what looks like a gas mask logo there, so you don't really notice it too much. So we'll see which body works. This one's got a lot more clearance in the front, so it may work. So let's put that aside for the moment. Let's start diving into this. Now I also have pre-mounted the wheels. There's definitely different front and rear wheels, and I've decided to go with my classic wheels from my original First Mini Z. This was a body only, and I had to buy the body clip separately, so I've got no actual wheels for this. And I don't think the wheels are necessarily a bad match, so I can live with that. These are, I want to say they're narrow, but the rear wheels actually seem a bit wider. They've definitely got a different profile. So the front wheels, you can see there, maybe if I put my finger behind it, if I can work out how to orientate it. So they're curved, but the rear wheels themselves are beveled, or have a curve on one side and then are flat on the other. And that's not flat perpendicular to the wheel, that's actually slightly angled. So these are designed to be with like 1 or 2 degrees of camber in mind. So let's now go to the instructions and look at the servo. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is orientate the servo horn correctly. And then I'm going to speak a bit about why I think Atomic have done an incredibly good job with the servo setup on this vehicle. So the reason I actually had my Servo Tester out before was not to show off and compare them. It was purely to line them up to 45 degrees. And no, I'll actually use my good one. I've actually got 2 of these. I've got a really, really cheap $5 one. And then I've got one for measurement, which has up to like, I think 8 ports in total. So 4 individually selectable ones, and then one that does 4 bulk ports. But I have actually had burnt out servos before, and this has been a great device to test them. And I use them for testing like so I'll actually prevent them from turning and see how much current they draw and just check my ESC that way. So we're going to, if I can remember how. No, that's not it. Hold that one down. No, that's not it. And I'll go OK. Enter. These are useful things to have, but you definitely don't need one. P1. And so I'm just going to rotate it till it's at the middle and reading 1500. Now, I actually think it's, well, it's not too important. So this should range from 0 to 2500. I think is it 1000? No, it goes from 1000 to 2000. And on some controllers, middle is 1020. And on others, it's 1500. On the NB4, I believe it's 1500. So I'm going to sync it to that. But there's normally a bit of a dead band, so it doesn't really normally matter where you are between 1500 and 1520. I mean, you could split the difference and just go 1, 5, 10 if you wanted. So, in fact, I might just do that. Yeah. Just to guarantee I'm in the middle of the dead band. Although I normally dial out the dead band completely on my transmitter. This is trickier than it looks. I mean, to be honest, I don't have to be too accurate, so let's pull that. Okay, so now I know my servo is at the center, and I do apologize. I'm going to have to enunciate some of my words a tiny bit better. I am a bit tired at the moment, and that never helps me at all. It always works against me. So we have to work out what type of servo horn we want. So I'm going to do a quick test fit, and just try and line that up with this pin here. So I do the least amount of work. Okay, that's good. And once again, I'd make this a bit more visible at your end, but yeah, I do have to use the smaller servo horn. It's just very, very difficult at the best of times, even for me. So I'm actually going to use my saw here, because I'm going to have to fabricate a custom shape on this. So let's just do that. And this just cuts through the plastic like nobody's business. And there's that tapping again. Annoying. Done. So that's one arm done. It's much quicker than a scalpel and a bit more precise. And you don't have to provide much force on like a scalpel. You've only just got to drag it back and forward, and if you're going slowly, that's fast enough. If you want to go a bit faster, you can just push a bit harder. The blade is pretty flexible, so it does limit how much power you can put behind it, but for fabricating custom servo horns, it's super quick. And in fact, I'm cutting off too much plastic with this, which is an interesting situation to be in. So one thing to watch out for with this is it just cuts through anything so easily that you have to be careful that you're not cutting off too much. If you don't want to use a scalpel and you want another quick method, as long as you're wearing safety glasses or glasses, just get a pair of a pair of side cutters and cut them off that way. But keep in mind that this is hard plastic and you will send stuff across the room, so be careful. And these RC Mott work mats are so robust. Like as you saw, I was running the saw back and forward on that, and it wasn't getting cut. So I do like having these down on my work surface. There we go. Now we're going to do a bit of cleanup work. If I can find my side cutters, and if not, I'm just going to use my file. And I can't actually see where I put my side cutters, so let's just file this off and make it round. Actually, the better way to do this is to run the plastic part. So normally you'd be tempted to run it like that, back and forward, to get a curve. I actually recommend running it back and forward like that, and then curving it like that as you go. You'll get a much better... the plastic will come off a lot easier, it's a lot easier to control, and you'll get much better results. Okay. And I mean, it doesn't have to be too good either, so... Just want to basically get rid of any sharp edges and just make it round, the end a bit rounded. And note, I'm not using the diamond file. The diamond file works really, really good on metals, but the steel file seems to work so much better on plastic, and I think it's just a difference in the cutting edge. So I'm going to call that good enough. At the end of the day, no one's really going to see this, so let's just organize that. Now I do have some screws here. Just try and work out what's best. The other thing that's interesting with these servos is when you go to put on the servo horn, you'll probably notice it doesn't sit exactly upright. So you have to make a decision whether or not you go left to right. In this particular case, it is dead upright, but on this particular model, I'd actually be kinking slightly to the right rather than slightly to the left. Just because I had a look at the steering geometry, and that seems to give the a slightly better and easier to work with setup. So now we just put the screw on there. Now all the screw does is hold it down. There we go. And it's the ribs in the side of the servo horn that actually keep it from rotating. So it doesn't have to be too tight. In fact, this is the one thing I've always found weird with servo hardware is the screws they provide never seem to fit on anything. So I might end up providing my own screw here. Actually, let's get the file behind that and provide a bit of leverage. Because this is indicating to me that the thread is wrong. It's likely too skinny. Okay, provides a bit of leverage. And all you're doing is pushing to one side so it catches the thread and forces its way out so it's not floating in the middle. Okay, so that screw was a bad match. Let's try one of the screws I've got here. We want a button head. You'll do. Swap you for that. I'm going to try and make sure I move the tools off to the side as I use them as well. That's what it's doing. No, that doesn't work. Maybe check this one. It's a bit too long, but that slides in too easily as well. What else do I have on hand? It's a bit of a weird one actually. So that screw is definitely too loose. I do have some other screws from other projects over here. You're looking good. I think you're a pretty massive size though. Just gotta find the right hex bit for this one now. Oh, you're even bigger than that, wow. There we go. I knew I had it somewhere. Okay, what about you? You seem oversized, but we'll see. No, I mean, you go in, but don't go very deep. Okay, what about that one there? That's a self-taping screw. I don't know if I want to use that. Funny enough, I think this is going to be the slowest part of the entire process. Let's look at my spare screw collection. So I want something big. And I've only got tiny screws here. Let's collect some other screws. I think you're probably the same. Oh no, you're a slightly different screw. Let's try you. It might be the difference between like a metric screw versus an imperial screw as well. Sometimes it can be so close. Well, that seems to be going in. Now this is not the proper screw for it. This is one of those conical ones, but it's going to be good enough. It only needs to hold the head in and prevent it from coming off like that. As I said, most of the gripping is actually done by this servo horn, which is ribbed on the inside. So I'm going to call that good enough. Now they're talking about a 2.5mm ball head. Just want to see which one is that. I think that's a smaller one. Let's grab one of those and let's do it properly. And we'll measure that. 2mm. And then they talk about a threaded rod. No, that's in the next step. So this needs a white spacer, and luckily we've got one of those spare. And I know the white spacers fit on this, so this is definitely a 2.5mm ball head. So we just push that on like that. We now try and locate the head for it. It's not that one. It's too small. Way too large. Way too large. Now I actually did have a delivery from RC today, so I did get another magnetic mat. And these are really, really handy. The magnetized ones are great in case you do bump them, because everything stays where you left it and doesn't go all over the place. So if you do have the opportunity to chuck one of those in your shopping cart when you're buying parts, it's a fairly decent buy. Well, I'm not going to be able to find the right size, am I? Yeah, that fits. Okay. Oop, careful, and it came off the ball head. That's all right. What we're going to do is push you back in, push you in over the top. We now have the white collar captured. Those collars are still blown out, but that's fine. Actually, that was the other thing I was going to do. I'm going to do one last test fit. And I'm glad I did, because I've actually got the servo horn upside down, so silly me. Oh, no, you're a hex bit, aren't you? And you're a very, very specific size. Yep, you're that size. Oh, actually, did I? Yeah, so this servo actually is continuous rotation, so let me Oh, I've lost already. There it is. Let me reset this back to 0. And yep. So I did have this the right way. It's all right. Okay, that's facing up. So now we go through the process of finding out where I put that screw head again. Was it you? Yes, it was. Oh, yep. So sorry, we're doing a test fit, and I want to make sure I didn't use too high. I've got 2 positions on here, and I want to make sure I use the right position. Okay, so we're going to take off the top one in that case. And for that, I'm going to use this again. I would normally use the clippers for this, for just clipping off the top, but as I said, I can't remember where I put them down. Oh, this is a bit more dicey. Can I just simply bend the top off? No, I don't think I can. No, not enough leverage. Okay. Maybe I will just score it up just to make the initial slice a bit easier. There we go. Swap back to that and start cutting. Just lightly to get it started. And we cut into the hole, not on either side of it. Now we might need some super glue for this next part where we put the actual pin in. Sometimes the holes are just not the right size. Okay. Now we finish this up and just round off the sharp edges, make it look a bit more presentable. Go in at 45 degrees and then round it off. Being careful not to touch the metal. Although having had to file metal parts off this in the past, the metal on this is surprisingly resilient, even with a decent set of files. So I wouldn't be too worried about hitting the metal. The only problem is it's going to blemish. So okay, and take the back extra piece off. Yep, that's good. Not going to be too accurate on that. Quickly check. Okay, so the hole is really, really tiny, and so it is actually going to hold that pin. And what I'll do now is I'm going to pre-thread it back, or only pre-thread it partially, back it out, then put the white spacer on. Actually, no, what I'm going to do is open up the hole a tiny bit. There we go. God, I'll be happy when this is done. Okay, so just making sure it's going in straight, which is the important part. It's providing moderate pressure and trying to let the thread do the work. It's not working that well, so I might have to apply a bit of pressure to get it started. And then it should go in on its own. Yep, okay. So that should be enough for the moment. Let's put the white spacer on. You're going to be tricky, aren't you? So I did a quick search earlier. There doesn't appear to be too many videos on the DRZ2. So in some respects it's nice to be ahead, but in other respects I'm not uploading the highest quality content at the moment. And so I don't think too many people are going to be willing to watch my entire video. So I'm hoping to do a summary this weekend of it, and like a final abbreviated version of everything in the 6 hours plus worth of videos that I've uploaded in the last couple of days. Okay, maybe I should have done this before putting the servo horn on. Might have been smarter. I don't think it's going in enough, so we're going to dig out the hole a bit. There you go. Just makes it slide in a tiny bit easier. Okay, let's try that again. Now the other reason why you might want to end up gluing this in is it's very, very easy to strip the hole. And it's not always the best fit. So let's take a look at that. Just be back in a sec. Have to be a bit careful here. We are dealing with moving parts and we definitely don't want to super glue those moving parts. It's my accelerator. Now this is, they call it helmet glue, but it's just super glue. I was using it to stick EL wire onto one of my bike helmets. It's a pedal bike, not a motorcycle. Did that end seal up? Yes, it did. That's what. Once again, Leatherman multi-tools to the rescue. And we just squeeze it slightly to open it back up, because we did end up compressing the end. And I'll just put that in there and clean it up a bit more. There we go. Cool, that looks good. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Just going to make a ball like that. Then I'm going to clean up the end like that. Put that there. Use one of these as a disposable tool. It just gives me a lot better control over the super glue. I'm not going to do it on the inside of the ball, sorry, on the outside. It would just be a bit too easy for that to end up causing binding. Okay. Now, from memory, all that accelerator is actually water. If I remember correctly, this super glue actually hardens in the presence of moisture. So when you're blowing on it, you're actually just using the moisture from your breath to cure the super glue. So if you do it with wet hands, for example, or you go to wet your hands to wash it off, you will actually end up causing it to harden. And just to be on the safe side, I do have active glue there. So we first take that off there, and we clean the end here, and then I'll show you what we're going to do. I do a lot of work with epoxy, and the house was smelling like nothing but epoxy earlier. And I do have to make sure I cure the epoxy before I throw it away, because otherwise it ends up sticking to the craziest stuff. Cool. So we just cure it so that if I put my arm in it for whatever reason, I don't end up ruining my clothes. And then I normally fold it in on itself. And yeah, look, that wasn't fully cured. I just got super glue on my finger. So let's stash that away where I can completely forget about it. So that's done. I'm going to move that back up to the top. Everything's moving fairly still. And we're going to go talk about why the motor mount on this vehicle is particularly exceptional. So if we have a look here, you can see it's off to one side. But if we have a look at the frame itself, so they've got two, it looks like you can put it on the left or the right. I originally thought it went in the center in these center holes, but then the mounting points end up being either side of this. So it turns out you put one side there, and then this adapts to whatever size servo you've got. So that's actually a really, really nice touch. On a lot of the previous Atomic products, the servo I have used has been a slightly different size to what they recommend, and it has not been the best fit. So let's bury that in there, and I can already feel that super glue hardening on my finger. And I'm not going to wash that off for reasons previously mentioned. Let's do that. So I normally actually just push the screw up a bit and then use that to line it onto the hole, but for whatever reason, I think that's the wrong... Yeah, that was the wrong head, so we do that. I actually did a test fit of this last night, so I know it all works, and I know which holes I have to put it in. I was kind of blown away when I did a test fit of the servo last night. It's like, it's really hard to overstate how nice of a system that is. Like, they've had configurable servo mounts in the past, but I've always found that they never really, like, I had servos that were too small for it. And I had to do a variety of tricks to get them to work, including modifying the servo mount itself, or the flanges on the servo. And that's why I know why this servo in particular is very, very, very difficult to file down, because I've had to manually cut slots into it before to actually mount the servo. So the BZ3, for example, I think the servo fit perfectly on that. But like the SZ and the BZ 2017 is not the cleanest fit. So I'm just going to make that tight. This is metal on metal. I'm using the metal servo mounts. Once again, I'm not going to... For metal on metal parts, I would normally Loctite it, but I'm actually going to live without that. I do have some of the screws protruding slightly, but I do have a trick for that I'm going to talk about later. I did pick up some fluoride sheet for the Mini Zs, and I think I might end up covering the entire bottom with a single fluoride sheet. On the 1/10th scale, that's really, really common because it helps protect the bottom against mud and dirt damage, and you see it a lot on the buggies, but less so on Mini Zs. But I might do it just because it'll make things look a bit cleaner. Okay, so we need you. And we need you two, and we're going to do a test fit with one of the balls, and just make sure that that moves really, really slowly. I don't want any binding in the steering either. I mean, the servo I've got is powerful, but the less power it has to apply, the faster it actually is. So we'll put that into there, and then we mount that up on top like that, and that definitely needs some work. So I'm actually going to screw them together because it's going to make it a bit easier to work with the ball there, so I don't forget it. Okay. So just checking, sometimes they've got like a hex mount mounted on these threaded rods to make it easy to go in, but it doesn't look like that's the case here. So I'm going to cheat and lightly grasp this rod, because it does look like it is brass, and if it is brass, then, oh God, did I just lose it? I heard it tick over here, so there it is. You don't want to grasp it too hard, because yellowish metals are normally pretty soft. Though it can be hard to tell if it's just anodized yellow or if it is actually like a yellowish metal, such as bronze or copper or... Yeah, once I've got one side on, that's easier. Now we have to be careful not to over-time these, because these, they don't stop, they balloon out and then they just break. So once I've got both ends threaded on partially, if I twist both ends simultaneously, the forces should even out and they should come together naturally. There you go. What do they recommend? Not much in terms of size. So let's take you to the top. You know what I've done? I've actually put the ball joint on the wrong side. So that was really smart of me. If I do a test fit like that, if I do 1 or 2 more rotations, I think that's an almost perfect fit. Yep, that would have been perfect as well. Okay. So we have a couple of options here. It's all going to depend about if I can get that super glue off the back there. So I'm going to undo the servo mount again. Maybe I won't get it done. I don't think I'm going to finish soldering the electronics, but I might do that off camera. I don't really kind of have the setup here, and that's something I like to do in a very, very specific light. While this light is fairly blue, it's still a bit warm for my liking for soldering. And soldering, you can inspect the joints a lot better under a very, very blue light, like a fluorescent light. And I recommend doing that, because under a yellow light you can't tell, it makes it a lot harder to tell the difference between a good joint and a bad joint. And you should always be having good joints. Yes, that was a joke. I did intend it. Okay. And we just take off that super glue off the back. And we poke a hole through. Okay, let's see how this goes. Really glad I didn't pack away that super glue now. Really, 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 really glad about that. Okay, that's going in. And because we put the scalpel inside and created a like a cavity, there'll actually be a bit of a gap around the side there, which will be actually help the super glue go in better, which will be nice. So this time I've got a tissue, and we're just going to put the super glue directly onto that, because I can't be bothered getting some plastic. Done. Get a nice ball of glue going there. Now you don't need much, but you do want a distinct, noticeable ball of it. The reason you want a ball and not just like a flat smear is if you have to undo this at a later time, it just gives you something to work against with like a scalpel. So it does mean, though, it does take a bit longer to dry, and you do need to be aware of that. So the outside might be hard, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is done per se. Now, super glue is dangerous, so be careful with it. dispose of it properly. And we'll grab another tissue for the accelerant. And because I need to blow my nose constantly because I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. And yes, it is a cold. It's not COVID-19 because a running nose is not a sign of COVID-19. So it's not a symptom. That's not to say I might not have COVID-19, but I'm more worried about the cold at the moment. Let's put you, actually, you're the helmet glow, you're not the accelerant. Always check your containers. There we go. Single drop. Glue's over there. Clean the bottom. Just wipe off any excess, because that accelerant may actually end up containing some super glue. You know, the outside of that bump is going to be fine. So if I go, oh god, I hate this lining the camera stuff up. Let me try the other hand. Can you see it? Oh. So you can see I've got a sizable bump there. That just makes removing it a lot easier. It looks a lot more pronounced on the camera than it is in real life. It protrudes as much as a screw head, the way I've got it set up. So now we'll put it back on. And watch this, I'll have stuffed it up again and again and again, and I have to keep on removing it. Servos are definitely one of those things that can be time consuming, and that's why I know to center the servo before you actually put it on the chassis. You don't make that mistake too often. God, I haven't really gripped that well, have I? There we go. Once again, love this screwdriver. One of the better pieces of tools, or one of the better tools I own. That's gone through, but that's not actually... Okay, that screw head's too small, that's why. There we go. That tightens it. So I'm not going too tight at the moment, I'm just getting all the screws in, and then I'll go around and tighten it finally. Especially if I wanted to align this as well, you definitely don't want it too tight, because you want to be able to shift it around and then tighten it into place. And in fact, what's the time? The time is 6 o'clock already, wow. I had hoped to jump on as soon as possible, but I do want to get pizza for dinner tonight because I don't feel like cooking. And it seems so far, Monday seems to be the traditional day of the week where I end up getting pizza, so let's back that off half a turn. There we go, get that in. I really should have done these circular holes before I did the sliding entries, but that's fine. So I was on YouTube the other day, and I saw a game called Car X on Steam, which was a drifting game that caught my attention. So I've been wanting to play some drift games online, and I found... So I bought Need for Speed Hot Pursuit because it was only a couple of dollars, and that's been a bit of fun, and I'm going to get back into that. And it supports a steering wheel to some degree under Linux. And I've also been playing Dirt 2 on occasion, but Dirt 2 is really... It's going to take me a while to get good in that game, and I wanted some quick fun, but Car X seems like a good blend between arcadish and real-life drifting, so gave it a quick run last night, but then at lunchtime today gave it a quick run with the steering wheel, and my god, it seems like once I get the steering wheel working, it seems like it's going to be an incredible game to play. I just had some issues with the steering wheel under Linux, so... Okay, awesome. Now we check which sides are that and which sides are that. Okay, so I've got them perfectly aligned. Now what we're going to do is focus on getting these nice and smooth. So I can see some spur lines, which I'm just going to try and remove very, very briefly. These are really, 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 really rough. So I normally do most of my soldering in the kitchen, and that's because the kitchen has fluorescent lights. So that's why I'm saying I probably won't do it on stream. I'll probably do this and take this in the kitchen and get it all sorted. The big question to me is whether or not I might do the removable motor trick with the standard connectors I use, or if I go for the full direct connect. And I'm very, very tempted to do the direct connect just to keep the entire design really nice and clean. I want to kind of make it a bit of a showpiece, the soldering job on this car. So that seems pretty smooth, not perfect. So I'm going to enlarge that a bit. Okay. And I'll just do that like that. In fact, this will probably be the soldering iron I end up using for it. So I've got a chisel head, which is a bit better for soldering the motors, and we'll give that a go. Kind of wish this was mounted into something that could make it a bit. In fact, why don't we just mount that into one of the spare servo horns I've got? That will make my job a bit easier. So, and we're just going to force that in rather than do it with any sort of finesse. No, it doesn't want to go in. Do our old trick. Okay. Grip and push. There we go, it's biting. And let's rotate that in. Wow, have I been streaming for an hour already? Time just flies when you just stream after work. Cool, let's try that now. No, and let's try the other one. And it's popped out already, so maybe we have to go full depth here. Oh. Cramp in my hand happens really, really, really often when I'm doing fine work like this. Even if I'm loaded up with salt, so. I've got a feeling that we just need to clear a bit more plastic, so. Got plenty of holes to make mistakes on this one, so I'm not particularly worried. I just want to have something that's a bit easier to leverage against. So there we go, that's going in, and I've got resistance. Okay, that should be enough. So quick test fit. Why are you not popping on? No, too tight. And the other side. So I'm going to focus on that side first. So I'll pop that on there in my little jig. And provide a bit of force. And do it again. And we just want it falling underneath its own weight, so it's almost there. Just one more push. Bam. And I'll also take the opportunity to clean up the outside while I'm at it. There's just the slightest little spur line on there that's really irritating me. Okay, it did fall down on its own just once, but let me, let's take that off and pull my jacket up a bit, and there we go. That actually hurt quite a bit. So mini Zs are a painful hobby. So I'm actually not feeling any resistance, but it's also not falling on its own. So I want to say I'm actually pretty happy with that. But maybe there's one last trick we can do. So I'm going to, there you go, that's what I'm looking for. Just take a tiny bit of plastic out of the top. Yeah, I can barely feel any resistance, and I don't want to stretch it out anymore, so let's try the other side. Which needed a lot of work. Yeah, quite a bit more. So it definitely makes a difference on the suspension. The steering, as I said, like these servos are pretty powerful, so I just want to make it smooth rather than resistance free. And I think we'll just actually swap to going with this at the top, do it that way. There we go. And I heard that click, which is not good, but I've got plenty of these, so it's not the end of the world if I break one. Yep, okay. We're going to go with that. And I'm going to put you on the part that rotates least because you've got the most resistance of the two sides. I don't have to be directly up, I think I do. Or do I have to get underneath there? Maybe I have to do that. There we go. Pull those pins out, line that up, and we squeeze down from the top, like that. Now I'm going to put the wheels on, because there is a bit of a risk when we're rotating that the pins will slide back and cause issues. So, and I do want to see the wheels rotating left and right and checking out what the clearance is like. Maybe I'll just do it. Let's put a bit of pressure on that like that. That should make it easier to pull through. So let's go full lock and push from the back. There we go. I do highly suspect I'm going to have to use wheel spacers, but that's fine, I've got a lot of them. The swing arms I just bought came with a whole lot, so it's still too tight. There we go. So let's back off another half turn. I can see it catching internally in the wheel, so these little arms may have to be filed down on some of the wheels for some wheel choices. Oh, sorry, hiccups. Okay, how am I going to get this one on and off? Yeah, like these front wheels, or front arms, are really difficult to get all-wheel drive wheels on and off of. Basically because they freely rotate, so you've got to grip them somewhere, and there's not a lot of places to grip them on. Okay, so let's take a look at the front end there. So that stands pretty nicely. Wheels going in. The wheels are pointing inwards rather than out, so they're towing in, not out. And once again, we'll bring our handy servo tester. And you will learn to love these things because they can be such helpful little tools. And if we hook that up, we're not going to go maximum throw to throw. That would be a great way to destroy your chassis. You're going to want to do this under manual control. So there we go. And we get some pretty serious angles off that. I do notice the front suspension's moving around quite a bit, especially when you hit your maximum throw. And that has to do with the knuckles. Well, maybe not. I was going to say the knuckles hitting the chassis, but something else is binding by the looks of it. And it isn't until the suspension pushes itself up that that corrects itself. Why does that wheel... I can't see what's actually hitting. That's all right. I don't think I need extreme steering angle to begin with. So if I get that... Yeah, it's a bit more pronounced in one direction compared to the other. Oh, you know what it is? It's actually hitting the servo itself. Wow, that's actually really, really bad. Which is weird, because this is the same size servo, right? So, why is that happening if it's the same sized servo? That's right. As I said, I don't think I need maximum throw to begin with, but I might have to file that down or fix that up. So, okay, cool. We're going to leave the wheels on for the moment, I think, just to speed things along. And I'll work out how to solve that later. So it's actually right here, this, see that little pin there? When I rotate to that direction about there, it's actually hitting the servo. So if we go to, where did I put that other servo? This servo here. You'll notice that there's like a protrusion here. Yeah, here. It's actually bumping against that. And I'm actually wondering if that was 1/2 mil higher, if that would just clear. Which I'm going to put down to crappy design on their end. So I was giving them a lot of praise for the servo setup, but maybe not. Oh, actually, no. I stand corrected. It's not binding there, so it's actually binding somewhere else. And now I can't reproduce it. Oh, interesting. Maybe. And it completely goes away if the chassis is under load. Okay, that's interesting. Now I want to go back and talk a bit more about why I think the offset servo is great. That's because I can now put the hex servo there, and then yep, I have enough clearance. So It's going to be able to work perfectly with that. And I mean, I could even do the ESC above that, like that, and have a stack, and then have the radio on top. But we'll see how we wire that up once we've got everything all together. So what do we do next? I think we choose the wheelbase. So no, close, no banana, we take that. And now we're looking at the body and battery holder, which is just a classic battery holder on so many of their chassis. I don't really have an opinion on it. It works, so why not? There's the arms. Oh, actually, I'm going to quickly grab one of my mod parts here because I just noticed something. So okay, so the aluminium BZ3 front posts do look like they will fit on there, on those upper arms as well. They look to be nearly identical dimensions. I'd have to have them out side by side, but just laying them over the top, the offsets seem nearly identical, so that's good news. Put you there. So I'm actually just trying to actually find what happened to my battery holder, because I found half of it, but not the other half. And that is kind of surprising. It's not there. Goes into that like that, yep. Oh, grub screw. Grub screws are one of those things that you can never have too many of and disappear at the drop of a hat. So if you do find one, put them aside. Well, we know it's a standard part, so let's just see if I've got a part laying about. Sure, I had some spares. Okay, so some wheel offset stuff if I need it. Diffs, battery holders, special BZ3 battery holders. I might just go steal one. One sec while I go grab it. So DRZ direct mount. This is one of the ones where I had to file down the servo on one side to get it sitting flat, but exact same battery mounts. Actually, which? Oh, that's where my McLaren mount went. That's good to know. Okay, let's just find an appropriate screwdriver for that. Pop those screws out, put them in the pile. There we go, and let's just confirm that they are actually the same part. And did I lose the mounter mode again? The mounter, sorry, did I lose the battery mount again? I think I just did. Oh my, how could I be so stupid? Did I put it down? Okay, well, I'm not even going to bother finding it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to steal another motor mount. Sorry, battery mount. Yeah. So I was just checking the rear setup for the motor on that one, and it is identical. So I want that going over that way. You're recommending the flatheads, really? Flathead, M25s, okay. One. So I've got these longer ones and I've got these shorter ones, and I suspect I need the longer ones rather than guess. And just do a quick test. So we are going to go with the longer ones by the looks of it, but I don't think I've got enough of those, so maybe I was right there. How many do I need? I need 6 in total. There we go. Let's try you. Are you a good fit? No, you're an incredibly bad fit. Let's try that again. Yep. Okay, second time's a charm. And are you threaded? You are partially. So I'm going to pre-thread everything here, just to make getting everything on and off a bit easier. And then I'm actually going to put the body posts on before I put the battery mounts on, because I've just got a bit more flexibility in how I hold and set everything up if I do it that way. Oops. There we go. So this is looking very good, and we're finally getting there. The other thing to check is, you can probably see that it's solid black there. Now, you don't want that. That's actually where they've screwed up this design. You want to pop that out, because the Mini Z body actually sticks through that. So no, that's not going to work. Let's try that. So I just had to make sure I wasn't putting my finger down on top of the blade. So common mistake. There we go. Slowly, slowly. Use this scalpel to help. And I'll show you what it looks like in a sec. So once I do that, and let's clean it up a bit more. Oh, it's fiddly work, but this has caught me out a couple of times, and once it's on the body, it's very, very difficult to fix up, and it's very easy to strip these to the point where the screws don't hold it down anymore. So you really want to have this working the first time. There you go. So you can see now it's got a distinct groove in it, or a distinct cut. So trap for people new to the hobby or to the custom building side of things. Okay. So this time I'm just putting the blade down and rotating the plastic part back on both sides. And I should be able to push that forward and then cut it from the outside. That needs a bit more work. Okay. That one went a bit quicker. And it's funny, you know, like I've always found when doing these that one side's always really difficult and the other one is an absolute cakewalk to clean up. So you just have to make sure that they're orientated correctly so that the groove faces outwards like that. Yeah, if I can angle it right, yeah. Because the body is grasping from the outside. So put those in first and then we'll screw them down. Yep, that looks good. Kind of wish I was not doing this during the week, but that's fine. These things take a lot of work. Okay, and as I said, don't over tighten them. I'm just letting my fingers slip over the surface because you don't want to strip out the plastic on that. And there's no benefit to over torquing them. They don't actually hold much weight. They're not a structural piece. They only have to keep the body on, and the body doesn't need much force to be kept on. If you've got enough force to have the body come off, you probably have a pretty incredible build. Yep, that's good. So when I put these battery mounts in, actually I'm going to extend them a bit further. I normally push them through a tiny bit extra, just so I've got something to, a bit of a protrusion to line up against. And then I normally line them up, back it out half a turn, then start screwing it in. So back that one out. Getting your hand movements right is half the battle in this. And the other thing is you want to be providing a reasonable amount of force because you don't want... I've mentioned about having a gap between pieces that get sandwiched, and it's very, very easy to do so with this part in particular. Actually, let's try the other side. That might make it easier. So I'm going to do it where you can't see it because I've just got... It's easy to see here. So... That's one side done. So the easiest way to ensure they get sandwiched correctly, and in fact you can see I did stuff that up. So if we have a close look here, there's a little gap there. And did I do it on the other side? Yeah, I did it on both sides. And that's because I'm screwing into this and then screwing into that, and so there's two things that can be threaded into. Although if I do that, okay, maybe I just have to apply pressure in the right place. And so it's very easy to get the threads misaligned on it. It doesn't take much effort at all to screw that up. Luckily in this case it hasn't been too much of a tragedy. So I think I just had the mount off slightly to the left or the right. In fact, that's still very, very loose. What the? Is that the right? It doesn't feel like it's the right fit for it, in all honesty. Yeah, okay, maybe I do need the longer screws here. I'm going to pop this one out. I don't have enough of the longer screws, which is a big part of the problem here. But we can test and experiment. Oh, that's a normal head. There we go. So that's good. Oh, goes back to front. There's probably better ways to mount the battery. I've never really been a big fan of these posts, but that seems better. Yeah, okay, that's a much better fit. So we'll back those out one by one. And I'll have to see if I've got some of those longer screws laying about. So you can definitely make things smaller when you're fabricating parts, but you can't make things longer. Despite what all that spam likes to tell you. Guess who's getting spam at the moment? So for probably the first time in, I want to say 15 years since I've owned my domain, I'm getting enough spam finally to actually justify putting the effort into putting a spam filter in place. Normally it's just come in fits and bursts, but there's just so much low quality bad spam at the moment that and it comes in pairs, and it's just distracting because I normally check my email immediately. So a new email comes in, and depending on the time of day, I normally read it almost immediately. And also depending on what I'm doing. But if it's mainly spam, it's kind of wasting my time. And I don't really care if the US is enacting some sort of gun laws or anything, because I'm not in the US. So that's why that spam is totally useless for me. Actually, the economics of spam are interesting. Spam does not work how most people think it does. And if I can find any screws, I'll dive into why that's the case in a sec. So spam is actually a low risk activity in that it's very, very hard to catch someone, let alone prosecute them for it. And if they get 1% of the people responding to their spam, they've likely made a bucket load of money. Like their success rates to make money are exceptionally low. I've seen the inside of some Nigerian print scams, and it's amazing how many people just offered up their credit card details without a second thought. So I don't think I've actually got any more of those screws, which is a bit of a problem. Oops, there goes my whetstone. But I do have some alternate screws, which should be just as effective, providing these two are the same. The other alternative, yes they are, okay, is to steal the screws from the DRZ, because I think at this point I will pretty much be using the DRZ for parts. Okay. Oh, actually, I need to pre-screw them, don't I? And this would be interesting to see if these are the exact same thread or not. If you feel if you back out a screw and then put a different screw in and you feel resistance when it should be biting in, just keep in mind you might have a different pitch on the thread. And if you screw two different types of screws into the same pitch, you're likely to damage the pitch. And what that just means is the strength will be a lot weaker and you're likely to strip it out. So I have talked about how the Mini Z really only has 3 types of screws. The pitch on the self-taping screws versus the normal screws is just subtly different, and so it's very, very common, at least on my end, to swap over to the other type without even realizing, and then you unscrew that second type at some point in the future, and then it goes back in and it doesn't grip at all. In which case you have to epoxy the hole and retap the hole, or use self-tapping screws. Let's just, this time because the screws are black, it's a bit more difficult. It's black on black on black in bad lighting. Alright, so one side's gone in, which makes this a lot simpler. Make it a bit tighter. Just finger tight there. Back that off because that plastic part is very malleable. And then we go over here and that's gone in without too much of a problem. It's just lightly tightening everything up now. Oops, wrong one. Cool, and I've made, being careful to make sure I've got flexibility with this cable. This is going to dictate where the receiver goes, so given the length of the cable, the receiver is either going to be on the top, and it's going to be mounted like that, or I might mount it towards the back. But it's likely going to be in the center, or at least offset. And I think I might offset it to offset the weight of that, so pretty happy with that. Okay, now we choose the wheelbase. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a test fit of the body. Now this is the first time I've ever seen a black motor mount, so I was a bit worried that we didn't have one there for a sec, but it looks like we're all good. And motor mounts are where electric screwdrivers come into their own. So that should just come in from the top. And pins go in. Now I know what that piece of plastic's for. Where did I put that? There it is. So this should go over the top on here. So we've got something to screw into. Yeah, it does look like it goes over the top, so and this is incredibly hard to get on. Okay, because the shocks are actually interfering, so there we go, and then that goes on the top there. So I don't know how I hold this all in place, but nope. I think I'm actually running low on screws, so I know I need you guys but I don't think I've got any of the longer ones around still. Oh yeah, I do. One. I mean, I've got plenty of spares to the side here, but it also might be indicative that I'm using the wrong screws in a couple of places. As I said, I'm not a particularly big fan of how how Atomic does screws. To me, it feels like they don't think about it much. Okay, that side went in, that's good. In fact, the black body mount at the front is a bit of a nice touch. Especially if I've got a white body. Okay, so let's see, are we going to be using a Lancia Delta? Now is the moment of truth. Okay, it's actually quite a bit more height in the body than I originally thought. The wheel offsets are definitely wrong, but that's a consequence of the wheels I chose more than anything else. There we go. So they turn left and right fairly easily. The body sits a bit high, if anything. But that actually just works in my favor. That just gives me more travel. So like you can feel that. Oh, look at that. Look at how slowly that comes back up. That is very, very sweet. I'm super, super, super happy with that. So let's quickly line up the back on that one. And yep, look, it looks like this body is way too small for this chassis. So what's the minimum size? So maybe this is an 86mm body. I hadn't even thought about that. It looks like we're not going to be able to fit that. I mean, I could cheat and bring it forward like that. But is that going to work? No. How do you... Yeah, it's got to be an 86mm body. In fact, let me measure the offset. Wow, okay. I didn't realize I actually had an 86mm body. That is kind of a shame. That was kind of cool looking. Oh, maybe they make it an 86mm body in the future. I mean, I could conceivably cut 4mm off the body. And let's pop the chassis off. Oh, God, like that is so unbelievably cool looking. It's annoying. This chassis is so difficult to get on and off as well. There we go. So if I shaved 4mm off, as it is, we can have battery clearance issues. And in fact, I think we're going to have we'd actually have parts colliding if that was the case. Okay, Lancia is totally out. Such a shame. You've got no idea how much that annoys me at the moment. After going through like selecting all those bodies and then finding like none of them fit, that's kind of painful. Let's put you back on there. Although maybe I'll just have to do a 86mm body rear mount MRO3 build. That could be fun. And put that in there. What's the time? It's almost 7 o'clock, so I have to think about grabbing some dinner shortly. But we will get the body attached before then. So that goes in there, that goes in there, that goes like that. And the motor prevents me auto-torquing or over-torquing it, which is good. I have lost more Mini Z chassis that way than I care to admit. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, I'm just going to put that on loosely, put that back in the case, and grieve. So what about you? What sort of wheelbase are you? You are, if I go like that, and I go like about there, got a feeling you're only 90mm. So the best way to check is with this body. Yes, you're 90mm. So that's relatively easy to satisfy. Where are those screws going in? Just on the outside? Looks like it. So I've done all of that. That's a servo. I can't see where those M23 flatheads are going into, but let's do the M24 button heads. If I can remember where I put that carbon fiber. There you are. So we're attaching to the front. 1, 2. Lightly torqued. So I've swapped to, normally I used to torque them till they were basically as tight as I could and there was no movement whatsoever. Sort of changed my philosophy now to like the minimum amount of torque required, and then just tighten up as required. Seems to be a much better policy. And if a screw doesn't work, I just throw it in the bad pile and move on. This is why I buy screws in bulk. There's no point trying to get a screw to work and potentially damaging the chassis. You just go with something that cuts in and works the first time. Yeah, so that's much better. The putting bad parts on your chassis, and it's always the parts you don't think about that can cause the most damage, like screws and whatnot. It's possibly the worst thing you can do. Most expensive, like especially considering how cheap the parts are, it's just better to buy them, have a whole lot of them on hand, and just pick the best ones. Okay, that's going to click in, I think. If I go. Let's check the screw pattern. So they've only got one screw in here. That's the weirdest thing. So I'm going to improvise. Okay, so I actually I have the screw in. They actually don't indicate which holes you need to screw in. So I probably have a whole lot of these small flat ones, and I'm just going to put every single one I can find into the body. Actually, I might just use the preset holes. I don't think I want to use a sliding holes. I don't think I need that much adjustment. There might be reason to on other bodies, but so the sliding ones I'm talking about are these cavities here. I'm realizing I'm also putting everything behind the screen. I need to really draw some lines on the table to make it clearer as to which part of the table is visible and which is not. Okay, and last one. And then I might put the rear wheels on and a couple other parts and dress the vehicle up a bit. Okay, so let's test the torque on all those. Go in an X pattern. Okay, do a quick torque test. Frame seems solid. And they finish that off with button heads. Button head. Button head. Cool. Now there's some pins to position everything and clamp it down, although I found they didn't fit quite so cleanly in there, so I'm actually going to use these bolts to torque them into place. And in fact, they just slid into place very, very easily then. And this bolt here is not actually tightening. I'm getting no resistance from it, which is a bad sign. But considering there's never been a screw in there before, I'm going to blame Atomic on that one. In fact, this motor mount is completely off. Those screws don't line up. There we go. So I'm going to have to check for a bit of body flex after this as well. There we go. Looks good. Chassis seems flat. This is the extra body mount I bought for the A86. Actually, I do have a ceramic knife, which is really good for opening packages like this without cutting your finger open. I don't have any screws for that. Oh, that's fine. It doesn't take those screws, does it? And yeah, I can't remember where I've put it, but I've handed a couple of them out, and they're absolutely exceptional little devices. They only cost a couple of dollars as well. Like, I had no idea that a ceramic knife was even a thing, but as a package opener, they're hard to beat. Just leverage that down with a screwdriver. It clicks a good sign. Oops. Actually, I might use the screws to lever this down. It worked really, really well on previously. So, just put my finger there. Use a countersunk screw, force that all the way through. Nope, I don't have enough grab. actually kind of weird that this front body mount is so hard to put in. It's weird that you have to go from the top rather than the bottom like on the Mini Zs as well. I don't know why they chose to do that, but it seems like a very, very bad decision. Put you back there. You might have to resort to clamping it from the side. Yep. Oh no, okay. There you go. Okay, so you really want a pair of pliers for that. And then maybe I can push that down from the top. It's probably a similar operation. There we go. Put my finger on it. As long as I can get the screw into it, it'll just pull it all together, so... Yep, there we go. Do both sides and then tighten it up. Still very, very loose. It's better, not the best. Okay, let's put these rear swing arms in place. Sorry, let's put the rear wheels on. Just for style. And then it'll just be electronics, but I'm going to call it a day after that and likely do most of that off camera. So pull that all the way out. Put shield on the outside. Rotate that on. It's making contact, yep. Put that back on. And I mean, the wheel offsets are going to be horribly wrong, but we'll see what I can fix up with spacers, and I'll look. I think they want +2 on the back and then +1.5 on the front. And each spacer I've got is worth 0.5, so I could load up the spacers quite massively, but I need to find out what offset these wheels are before I do that. There you go. So the problem with plastic wheel nuts is they suck. And I've probably done these up and undone them too many times now in a way these ones are basically worthless. So that one's sliding like crazy. Why is that? It's because I did not have that aligned properly. Okay. Oh, don't tell me that swing arm's come out. Oh, it has. How did that happen? Okay, luckily that's fairly easy to fix on this. You just pop off the top there and realign it. But it also, by doing that, it actually makes it easy to get these wheels on and off. So you can just do that. Pretend it's in hover mode, like that. Back to the Future style. Okay, so we just balance that in like that and put the cap on the top. Actually, I've got to flip that 180 degrees. Snap that in. Refix that up. There we go. So there we have it, a somewhat complete fixed up DRZ, minus electronics, so rolling chassis only. As you can see, very, very, very soft at the back, at the front. Bit harder at the back, but these are fully configurable shocks, and we can adjust them how we like. And I'm very interested to see how the setup handles. We're putting a motor in here, and I did actually want to run the cables to the ESC down the center of the chassis like that, and then to an ESC mounted to the side there, but we'll have to see how that goes because there's other things like the ESC wire harness that have to go across there. And then we can put the hacker rank, so the hack slider there, and then we could possibly put the ESC on top like that. Actually, probably the other way around, like that. And then have the actual receiver unit actually on top of the servo. There's enough of a gap there, and I'm using a really, really ultra tiny servo, so that'd actually keep this nice and clean and almost level across the top. So final things to do. This one does have a lot of light mounting opportunities, so I'm very, very tempted to do that on the drift car. I have some ideas for a light computer that can be updated via Wi-Fi. I've got all the parts, I just need to work out how to wire everything up. And I've got the multicolor LEDs as well, so I'd be able to change any light to any color I want. And also put some down lights in. Going in, okay, that's better. There we go. So, there is my drifting A86. I just want to check how high the wheels go. Okay, so they actually want to stay on the inside. And that chassis almost goes flat, so that's really going to benefit from the fluoride sheet on the bottom. The front is probably a tad bit too high. It kicks up more than the back. I do have some ride height tools, and I'll tune that to 2mm at the front and 2.5mm at the back as per recommendations. Let's have a look at the roll. That's pretty good. I actually feel that the front chassis is not level. Yeah, one of those wheels is... Oh, you know why? Probably got the shocks with a different preload on them. Although, no, you know what? I've actually got the chassis is slightly twisted. No, it's not the chassis, it's the body is slightly twisted. Okay, so that's in the motor mounts now. If I drop it from there, like, you can see it just sticks, so. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty happy about that. I'm pretty stoked. Suspension's awesome. Such a soft, it's you see a lot of people do like that test, and that doesn't actually tell you much. It's great in a video to work out if it's stiff up the front of the rear, but that's about it. In terms of setup, it's totally useless. To actually feel that and actually see the dampening and it just slowly rising, oh, it's just so nice to do that in person. Okay, cool. So look forward to this having electronics wired up and going for a test spin. That'll happen the next couple of days. I've got a couple of days off this week, and I'd like to have it running before then. We'll see what happens, but there we go. Just a bit of a preview on the steering. We'll see what happens. If I can get it before then, I'll try and upload a quick video before then, because I know there's a lot of people out there at the moment who are very, very interested to see in what this looks like on the street. And I know at least one person has screwed up their build, so I might be able to get ahead of you, BMR3. Beat you to it. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching us on YouTube, and expect more videos. So do whatever you want. By which means I'm not going to say like and subscribe, because I really hate it when people say that. See ya.